The Galactic Academy of Sciences prided itself on being the most prestigious institution in the known universe. Located on a perfectly engineered space station orbiting a calm G-type star, it housed the brightest minds from over 300 civilizations. Most species arrived with pomp and circumstance, diplomatic envoys, and carefully vetted candidates. Humans arrived with Jack. Jack stepped off the transport shuttle wearing only standard-issue overalls and carrying a small bag of personal items. The reception committee, composed of representatives from the Academy's most influential species, stood in awkward silence as they observed the Deathworlder. To their credit, they managed not to flinch when Jack smiled, revealing what several species registered as bone daggers in his mouth. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy," said Director Trill, a tall, willowy being with luminescent skin. "We are pleased to have Earth join our community of scholars." Jack nodded enthusiastically. "Thanks. I still can't believe I got selected. There are way smarter humans than me, but I guess they wanted someone who could handle the, environmental challenges." Several tentacles twitched nervously among the reception committee. Everyone knew about Earth, classified as Deathworld Class 12. A designation that meant the planet was so hostile that most intelligent life would perish within minutes of arrival. Humans were the only sapient species to evolve on such a world. Their escort, Professor Kaz, a stocky reptilian with iridescent scales, led Jack through the station's main concourse. "Your quarters have been specially reinforced," he explained, "and we've installed additional gravity generators to approximate Earth conditions." "Oh, you didn't need to do that," Jack said, bouncing slightly in the station's standard 0.7 G. "This feels great, like I'm on a trampoline." Professor Kaz blinked his nictitating membranes rapidly, the equivalent of a confused frown. "But our research indicated humans require their native gravity for proper bone development." "Well, yeah, developing children do," Jack shrugged. "But I'm 22, my bones are fine. Actually, lower gravity might help with my tennis elbow." This was the first indication that the Academy's extensive preparations might have been based on faulty assumptions. The second came during orientation when Jack was introduced to his classmates, 30 brilliant minds from across the galaxy, each representing the pinnacle of their species' intellectual achievement. "And what is your specialty?" asked Lima, a gelatinous being who communicated through color patterns rippling across her transparent body. "Oh, I'm just a general biology major," Jack replied cheerfully. "My thesis was on symbiotic relationships in extreme environments." The tea room fell silent. Several beings exchanged glances. "But you're from Earth," said Vorn, a crystalline entity who processed thoughts through light refraction. "Isn't your entire planet an extreme environment?" Jack laughed. "I guess so. That's probably why I got interested in it. When you grow up with poison ivy, jellyfish stings, and mosquito bites, you start wondering why nature is trying to kill you all the time." The casual way Jack mentioned these horrors caused several students to edge away slightly. That evening, in the communal dining hall, Jack created another stir when he sampled foods from various worlds without hesitation. He particularly enjoyed a Zentarian fermented fungus that caused mild hallucinations in most species. "This is amazing," he exclaimed. "Tastes like a really good blue cheese." Professor Kaz made a note to update the human biological profile. Perhaps they were more adaptable than anyone had realized. As the students dispersed to their quarters, he caught Jack examining a decorative plant with interest. "Careful," Kaz warned. "The sap of the Lumerian frost lily is caustic to most species." Jack pulled his hand back. "Thanks for the warning. Though honestly, it probably wouldn't be worse than the poison oak we have back home." The professor stared at him. "You have plants on Earth that cause chemical burns? As a defense mechanism?" "Oh, yeah, tons of them." Jack nodded casually. "That's nothing compared to the ones that can kill you if you eat them. My mom has a whole garden of those. She calls them her ornamentals." Professor Kaz decided the Academy might need to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humans. 2 weeks into the first term, the Academy's curriculum included adaptive physical conditioning, a course designed to maintain student health across diverse physiological needs. The gymnasium was a marvel of engineering, capable of simulating environments from methane ice fields to sulfuric acid pools. Jack arrived in standard exercise clothes, shorts and a t-shirt. The other students wore specialized equipment ranging from pressure suits to anti-gravity harnesses. Today, we'll be assessing baseline capabilities, announced instructor Phil, a muscular insectoid whose forearms demonstrated proper stretching techniques. Each student will perform according to their species' normal parameters. When Jack's turn came, Phil consulted his data pad. Human, death world species. Let's set gravity at 0.8 Earth normal to prevent strain. I can handle Earth normal, Jack offered, or whatever everyone else is using. Phil's antennae twitched with concern. The standard setting is 0.3 G. Most species evolved in much gentler conditions than Earth. Jack shrugged. I'll try that then. What followed astonished the class. Into the reduced gravity, Jack's simple vertical jump launched him nearly 6 meters into the air. His sprint across the gymnasium looked like slow-motion footage of a predator closing on prey. When he casually performed a one-armed handstand, several students recorded the feat on their personal devices. Is this typical for humans? Asked Mick, a feathered mathematician from a low-gravity moon. Pretty much, Jack said, not even breathing hard. Though athletes back home could do way more impressive stuff, you should see Olympic gymnastics sometime. Instructor Phil approached cautiously. Perhaps we should move on to endurance assessment. Please maintain moderate exertion on the treadmill until you begin to tire. 2 hours later, Jack was still jogging comfortably while reading study materials on his tablet. The rest of the class had completed their sessions and gathered to watch in fascination. How is he not exhausted? Whispered Lima to Professor Kaz, who had come to observe. Humans are pursuit predators, Kaz explained quietly. In their evolutionary past, they would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They've evolved extraordinary endurance. Jack finally noticed the attention. Sorry, should I stop? I can go for a while longer if needed. That won't be necessary, Phil said, making furious notes on his pad. We have sufficient data. Later that day, the Academy's medical staff requested Jack visit for additional scans. Dr. Venn, the chief xenobiologist, couldn't hide her excitement. Your musculature density is remarkable, she said, examining holographic displays of Jack's physiology. And these redundant systems, 2 kidneys, a backup visual cortex, a liver that regenerates, it's as if your species evolved expecting regular damage. Jack nodded thoughtfully. That makes sense. Earth is pretty dangerous. Our bodies expect things to go wrong. But the most fascinating aspect is your endocrine system, Dr. Venn continued. You produce compounds that would be considered military-grade stimulants on most worlds. Adrenaline alone would be classified as a controlled substance. Really? Jack seemed genuinely surprised. But it's just being human. News of the human's physical capabilities spread quickly through the academy. Soon, students from various departments were finding reasons to observe Jack. The engineering students were particularly interested in his bone structure, which could withstand forces that would shatter their most advanced materials. That evening, in the dining hall, Jack found himself at the center of attention as curious students peppered him with questions about Earth. Is it true humans voluntarily jump from high places for recreation? Asked Vorn. Oh yeah, skydiving is super fun, Jack grinned. The freefall gives you this amazing rush. The table fell silent as everyone processed the concept of finding joy in plummeting towards certain death. Your species is fascinating, Professor Kaz finally said. Jack took a bite from his dinner, a dish most species found aggressively spicy. Thanks, I think you guys are pretty amazing too. The incident that cemented Jack's reputation occurred during advanced comparative chemistry. Professor Nellig, a gaseous being contained in a specialized environment suit, was demonstrating the volatile reaction between 2 common compounds. Please note the safety protocols, Nellig emphasized, their voice metallic through the suit's speakers. These elements are stable separately, but create an exothermic reaction when combined. Safety shields up, please. The students activated, They're personal barriers, standard equipment for species with varying atmospheric and pressure needs. Jack, however, simply donned safety goggles. "Mr. Jack," Professor Nellig noticed with alarm, "your protective barrier isn't activated." "Oh, I just have these." Jack held up his goggles. "Standard lab equipment on Earth." Nellig's gaseous form swirled with concern. "Those are insufficient. The reaction releases heat equivalent to 340 standard units." Jack looked confused, then understanding dawned. "That's about 80 degrees Celsius, right?" "Yeah, that's hot, but as long as it doesn't splash on me, the goggles should be fine for eye protection." The class stared in disbelief. Most species suffered cellular damage at temperatures above 50 degrees. "Your species can withstand such temperatures?" asked Lima, her translucent body pulsing with amazement. "Well, not indefinitely," Jack explained. "But humans take hot showers around that temperature, and saunas can get much hotter, like 100 degrees Celsius." Professor Nellig's environment suit actually backed up a step. "That is the boiling point of water." "Right, so the sauna isn't wet at that temperature," Jack clarified. "That would cause burns, but dry heat? We can handle that for a while." The demonstration proceeded with Jack wearing additional protective gear, not for his sake, but to avoid alarming his classmates further. Afterward, Professor Nellig asked Jack to stay behind. "I've been reviewing Earth's chemical composition," they said. "Your atmosphere contains highly reactive oxygen and nitrogen. Your water is a universal solvent, and your planet experiences constant radiation bombardment from your sun." Jack nodded. "Pretty standard stuff." "Not standard, Mr. Jack. Lethal to most life forms. Yet humans not only survive but thrive in these conditions." Nellig's gaseous form condensed slightly, a sign of intense focus. "And your biochemistry? You regularly consume substances that would be classified as toxins elsewhere." "Like caffeine?" Jack asked, thinking of his morning coffee. "Precisely. A neurotoxin that humans intentionally ingest for its stimulant properties. Then there's capsaicin, ethanol, theobromine. Those are just spicy food, alcohol, and chocolate," Jack laughed. "Which brings me to my question," Nellig continued. "Would you be willing to provide samples and participate in additional research? Your species' adaptations could revolutionize our understanding of biochemical resilience." Jack agreed enthusiastically. By the end of the week, he had become a regular fixture in the xenobiology lab, where researchers discovered with growing amazement that humans could metabolize compounds toxic to most sentient life. His demonstration of consuming a piece of chocolate containing enough theobromine to kill several smaller species was recorded for academic posterity. Word spread about the Death Worlder, who casually handled substances requiring hazmat procedures. Elsewhere, Jack began receiving invitations to collaborate with research teams across disciplines. "I don't get it," he confided to Professor Kaz as they walked to the xenobiology lab. "I'm not doing anything special. This is just how humans are." "That's precisely what makes you valuable," Kaz explained. "You provide insight into evolutionary paths we never considered viable. Your species developed on a world that would kill most of us instantly, yet you see it as ordinary." Jack considered this. "I guess when you put it that way, Earth is pretty metal." Professor Kaz's translator struggled with the idiom but captured the sentiment. As they reached the lab, a group of researchers looked up eagerly. "Perfect timing," said Dr. Venn. "We were just discussing the implications of human digestive acids being strong enough to dissolve metal." Jack grinned. "Wait until I tell you about our immune systems." A month into the term, the Academy's Environmental Studies Department unveiled their new planetary conditions simulator, a massive chamber capable of recreating the climate of any known inhabited world. Each student would experience environments from across the galaxy, learning firsthand about diverse ecological adaptations. "Today we begin with moderate conditions," announced Professor Geel, a symbiotic collective of plant-like organisms. "We'll progress gradually toward more extreme environments." The first simulation featured a gentle Class 3 world, warm temperatures, light gravity, and soft misting rain. Most students found it pleasant, though aquatic species required hydration supplements. Jack, however, looked uncomfortable for the first time since his arrival. "Are you well?" asked Professor Giel, concerned that even a human might have limits. "Just a bit warm," Jack admitted, wiping his brow. "And the humidity makes it feel hotter." The faculty exchanged glances. The chamber was currently set to 30 degrees Celsius with 60% humidity, conditions most species found mild and comfortable. "Would you prefer we adjust the parameters?" offered Professor Giel. "No, it's fine," Jack assured them. "Reminds me of summer back home. Though we'd probably have air conditioning." This casual mention that humans artificially cooled their already moderate environment sparked furious note-taking among the observing researchers. As the simulations progressed to more extreme environments, a pattern emerged. Conditions that other species found challenging, Jack navigated with ease. When the chamber simulated a high-gravity, high-pressure world that had most students struggling to move, Jack remarked that it felt like swimming in the deep end of a pool. The true revelation came when they simulated a Class 8 world with powerful electrical storms. Safety protocols ensured no actual danger, but the booming thunder and brilliant lightning created a sensory experience of a violent weather system. While most students cowered, Jack watched in apparent delight. "This is amazing," he exclaimed, over the artificial thunder. "We get storms like this in the Midwest all the time. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch and watch them roll in." Professor Giel's composite organisms rippled with shock. "Your species observes destructive atmospheric disturbances. For entertainment?" "Well, yeah," Jack shrugged. "There's something beautiful about watching a storm from a safe distance. The power of nature and all that." The final simulation scheduled. That day was of a volcanic region with ash-filled air and rivers of molten rock, conditions found on developing worlds or during catastrophic events. As the landscape formed around them, several students activated emergency breathing apparatus. Jack merely covered his mouth with his sleeve. "Wow, this is like that time I visited Hawaii during an eruption. The air quality is pretty bad, but the flowing lava is spot on." The session ended early when it became clear that Jack's casual descriptions of Earth's normal hazards were causing distress among his classmates. Later, in a faculty meeting, Professor Giel presented the findings. "The human not only tolerates, but appears nostalgic about conditions that would be considered disaster scenarios on most worlds," they explained. Based on his descriptions, Earth regularly experiences phenomena that would trigger planetary evacuation elsewhere. Director Trill contemplated this information gravely. "And humans have adapted to these conditions?" "More than adapted," Professor Kaz interjected. "They appear to have incorporated these hazards into their culture. They have recreational activities specifically designed around dangerous environments. They climb frozen mountains, dive into oceanic depths, and deliberately expose themselves to extreme temperatures in what they call saunas and ice baths. For fun," added Dr. Venn, still struggling with the concept. "It raises profound questions about their psychology," Director Trill mused. "What kind of intelligence evolves to not merely survive such conditions, but to derive pleasure from them?" As the faculty debated the implications, Jack sat in the student lounge video chatting with his family back on Earth. "How's space school?" his younger sister asked, bouncing with excitement. "Pretty cool," Jack replied. "Though everyone acts like I'm some kind of superhero just for being human." Today they freaked out when I told them about thunderstorms. His mother laughed on screen. "Well, be patient with them, honey. Not everyone comes from a tough neighborhood like Earth." The Academy's xenomicrobiology course was typically considered one of the most benign classes in the curriculum. Students observed unicellular organisms from various worlds through containment fields, safely analyzing their structures and behaviors, without direct contact. Professor Rilt, a crystalline entity specializing in microscopic life forms, began the session by displaying a hologram of standard bacterial morphologies. "Today we'll be cataloging samples from your home worlds," she announced. "Each of you has brought sealed specimens according to safety protocols." When Jack's turn came, he presented his sealed container. "These are just common soil bacteria from my backyard," he explained. "Nothing special." Professor Rilt activated the scanning equipment, and the results immediately triggered containment alerts throughout the laboratory. Emergency force fields. Isolated Jack's sample as warning lights flashed. "What's happening?" Jack asked, bewildered by the response. Professor Rilt's crystalline form pulsed with alarm frequencies. "Your common soil sample contains over 4,000 distinct microbial species, at least 60 of which show characteristics consistent with pathogenic organisms." The other students had retreated to the far side of the laboratory. Even Professor Kaz, who had grown somewhat accustomed to human surprises, looked concerned. "But these are just normal soil bacteria," Jack protested. "They're everywhere on Earth. Kids play in this stuff. Your sample contains organisms that actively consume organic matter," Professor Rilt explained, her voice modulated to remain calm. "Some appear capable of metabolizing proteins found in most known life forms." Jack nodded. "Yeah, decomposers. They break down dead things and return nutrients to the soil. It's part of our ecosystem." "Mr. Jack," Professor Rilt said slowly, "you're describing a planetary surface teeming with microscopic predators that consume dead tissue, and potentially living tissue as well." "Well, when you put it that way, it sounds bad," Jack admitted. "But our immune systems handle it fine, usually." This qualification did not reassure anyone. Professor Rilt ordered the sample secured in the highest containment level and dismissed class early. By dinner time, rumors had spread that humans coexisted with billions of microscopic killers on their skin, in their soil, and even inside their bodies. In the faculty lounge, Dr. Venn reviewed the findings with growing amazement. "The human microbiome is unlike anything we've encountered," she told her colleagues. "Their bodies host trillions of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses, in a complex symbiotic relationship." "How do they survive?" asked Professor Nellig. "Their immune systems are perpetually at war," Dr. Venn explained. "Human bodies contain specialized cells that hunt and destroy invaders. They maintain a constant biological defense that would exhaust most species." Professor Kaz nodded thoughtfully. "It explains their remarkable resilience to new environments. They've evolved alongside aggressive microbes. They're prepared for biological threats that would devastate less battle-hardened systems." The next day, Jack found himself once again in the medical bay, this time surrounded by fascinated xenomicrobiologists. They had discovered that human tears contained enzymes capable of destroying certain bacterial cell walls, a literal chemical weapon built into an emotional response. "So you're constantly fighting microscopic invaders?" asked a junior researcher, her tentacles curled in horrified fascination. "I guess so," Jack said. "Our bodies handle it automatically. We only notice when we get sick." "And how often does that occur?" Jack thought for a moment. "Maybe a few times a year. Colds, flu, stomach bugs. Nothing serious usually." The researchers exchanged glances. Most civilized species experienced illness perhaps once in a decade, typically from environmental factors rather than infections. And these colds, they're caused by viruses that constantly mutate to evade your immune defenses, clarified Dr. Venn. "Yet you consider this normal?" "Well, yeah," Jack shrugged. "Everybody gets colds." By the end of the week, the Academy had established new protocols for human interactions. While they determined Jack himself posed no direct threat, his microbiome was contained within his own robust immune system. His casual relationship with microscopic warfare provided yet another glimpse into Earth's status as an evolutionary battlefield. In his private communications with Academy leadership, Professor Kaz summarized the growing understanding. Humans don't merely survive on a death world, they are death worlds. Their bodies contain ecosystems that would qualify as hazardous on most planets, yet they consider this state of constant biological warfare normal health. 2 months into the term, the Academy held its annual Cultural Exchange Festival. Each student prepared a presentation showcasing their homeworld's history, arts, and achievements. The event was designed to foster understanding across species and celebrate diversity. Jack had been looking forward to sharing aspects of human culture beyond the biological curiosities that had dominated discussions about Earth. He set up his display alongside the others in the grand exhibition hall. Lima presented the liquid harmonics of her ocean world, rippling patterns of color and sound that brought several empathic species to tears. Vorn demonstrated crystalline thought sculptures that captured moments of mathematical perfection. Each presentation revealed the unique beauty that had evolved across the galaxy. When Jack's turn came, he began with Earth's artistic achievements, music, literature, visual arts, displayed on holographic screens. The other students watched with interest, nodding appreciatively at human creativity. Then Jack moved to what he called recreational activities. These are things humans do for fun, he explained, showing images of various sports. The faculty tensed, anticipating another cascade of Death World revelations. They weren't disappointed. "This is surfing," Jack said, pointing to people riding massive ocean waves. "You balance on a board while water moves under you at high speed." "Your oceans have periodic gravitational distortions that large?" asked a student from a world with minimal tides. "Pretty much everywhere," Jack confirmed. "Some waves get really big, like 15 meters or more." He continued through activities that increasingly alarmed his audience: skiing, sliding down frozen mountains on purpose, rock climbing, using just your hands and feet to scale vertical surfaces, and whitewater rafting, navigating turbulent river currents in an inflatable boat. Professor Kaz, who had been bracing for each new revelation, finally asked, "Are all human recreational activities potentially lethal?" Jack looked surprised. "No, of course not. Chess is perfectly safe. Well, unless you swallow the pieces." Before anyone could process this disturbing qualifier, Jack moved on to human cuisine. This proved equally alarming, as he cheerfully explained. "Fermentation, we let microbes partially decompose food to enhance flavor. Extremely spicy foods, chemical compounds that cause pain but taste great, and various dishes that were poisonous if improperly prepared. Fugu, that's pufferfish, contains tetrodotoxin that can paralyze and kill you," Jack explained. "But expert chefs know how to prepare it safely. It's considered a delicacy." "You consume toxic animals as a luxury?" Director Trill asked faintly. "Only certain ones," Jack assured him. "Though lots of common foods have small amounts of toxins. Potatoes, almonds, nutmeg, they can all be dangerous in large quantities." As Jack continued describing human dietary habits, Dr. Venn quietly updated her research notes. Human gastronomy appears to have evolved as a complex risk assessment system. They have developed cultural practices to safely consume substances that would kill them outright, suggesting an evolutionary history of testing dangerous food sources through trial and error, with error presumably resulting in death. The cultural presentations concluded with Professor Kaz asking each student to share one aspect of their species' philosophy. Most shared concepts of harmony, balance, or collective wisdom. When Jack's turn came, he thought for a moment. "I guess one big human philosophy is pushing boundaries. We have this saying, 'What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.'" The silence that followed was profound. "You believe that surviving danger generates improvement?" asked Vorn finally. "Sort of," Jack said. "It's about facing challenges and growing from them. Humans tend to get bored with comfort and safety. We like to explore, to test limits, our own and our environments." Later, analyzing recordings of the event, the Academy's xenopsychology department suggested this mindset might explain much about human history and biology. A species that viewed comfort as stagnation and risk as opportunity would evolve very differently from one that prioritized safety and stability. In his quarters that evening, Jack video called his family again, describing the day's events. "They think we're crazy for having extreme sports," he told his father with a laugh. His father chuckled. "Did you tell them about your skydiving certification?" "Not yet," Jack grinned. "I'm saving that for when they've recovered from learning about our bacteria." As the first term neared its end, the Academy organized an emergency response training session, standard procedure for ensuring student safety during potential station malfunctions or cosmic events. "Today we'll review protocols for various scenarios," explained Security Chief Mord, a heavily armored arthropoid. Though the Academy hasn't experienced a true emergency in over 70 years, preparedness remains essential. The students gathered in a simulation chamber where they would practice responses to depressurization, fire, gravitational failure, and other potential hazards. Each species had specific vulnerabilities requiring unique safety measures. When Chief Moore described the evacuation procedure for atmospheric contamination, Jack raised his hand. "What's our oxygen reserve duration in the emergency shelters?" he asked. The security chief's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. The atmospheric composition in shelters is maintained at universal standard, primarily nitrogen with trace gases. No shelter contains concentrated oxygen, as it's highly combustible and toxic to most species. Jack blinked in surprise. "But I need oxygen to breathe." The simulation room went silent as the implications sank in. "Your species requires continuous exposure to oxygen?" Chief Mort asked carefully. "Well, yeah," Jack said. "We breathe it, constantly. Our cells use it for energy production." Professor Kaz, present as faculty supervisor, stepped forward. "Oxygen is a highly reactive gas that corrodes metals and generates free radicals in most biological systems. It's classified as a metabolic toxin. For us, it's essential," Jack explained. "We can't survive more than a few minutes without it." The security chief's carapace paled slightly, his species equivalent of alarm. "And what concentration do humans require?" "About 21% at Earth standard pressure," Jack replied, "though we can manage with less in an emergency." Chief Mord immediately activated his communication device. "We need to modify emergency protocols immediately. The human delegate requires toxic gas supplementation to survive." Within hours, the Academy's engineering team had designed a specialized emergency respirator for Jack, essentially a mask that would filter the standard emergency atmosphere and add oxygen from a compact tank. Jack was equal parts amused and concerned as technicians fitted him with the device. "I still can't believe you all don't breathe oxygen," he told Professor Kaz as they left the engineering bay. "What do most species use for cellular respiration?" "Various compounds," Kaz explained. "Some use nitrogen cycles, others sulfur-based metabolism. Many employ photosynthetic processes or chemosynthesis. But free oxygen? That's primarily used by extremophile species from challenging environments." The oxygen revelation prompted Director Trill to call an all-faculty meeting. Jack was invited to attend as the discussion centered on human physiology. "Let me summarize what we've learned about humans," the director began. "They evolved on a planet with crushing gravity, toxic atmosphere, extreme temperature variations, constant radiation exposure, and regular catastrophic weather events. Their bodies contain corrosive acids, host colonies of aggressive microorganisms, and require a poisonous gas to function. They can withstand environmental conditions that would kill most species, process toxins for pleasure, and deliberately seek out dangerous situations for recreation." Put so bluntly, even Jack was taken aback by the description of his species. "The question before us," Director Trill continued, "is how we should approach future human integration into galactic society. Mr. Jack has proven an exemplary student, but his mere existence challenges many of our fundamental assumptions about life." Jack cleared his throat nervously. "If I may, Director, I think there's something you're all missing about humans." The faculty turned their attention to him. "Everything you've described makes us sound like monsters, biological terrors that somehow survived impossible conditions," Jack said. "But those same adaptations are why we care so deeply about protecting vulnerable things." He projected an image from Earth, a human hand gently cradling a tiny bird. "We evolved as survivors on a dangerous world, yes. But that struggle taught us empathy. We understand vulnerability because we've experienced it. Our strength exists to shelter, not to dominate." Jack showed more images. Humans rescuing animals during disasters, tending to the sick, rebuilding after storms. "The same adaptations that let us endure hardship also give us the capacity to prevent suffering in others," he explained. "Maybe that's the real lesson from Earth. Not that we're especially tough, but that adversity can forge compassion." The room fell silent as the faculty considered this perspective. Finally, Professor Kaz spoke. Perhaps this is the most important death world bombshell of all, he said, that the crucible of extreme evolution can produce not just physical resilience but moral strength as well. Director Trill nodded slowly. Mr. Jack, I believe you've given us much to consider regarding future collaborations with Earth. The meeting adjourned. Jack found himself surrounded by faculty members with new questions, not about human biological oddities, but about human philosophy, art, and social structures. For the first time, they were seeing beyond the death world classification to the civilization that had emerged from those harsh conditions. That night, looking out at the stars from his reinforced quarters, Jack recorded a message for the next human student who would attend the academy. They'll be fascinated by our biology, he said, and terrified by our planet. But what will truly change their understanding is learning that strength can serve compassion, that survivors can become protectors, and that perhaps the greatest adaptation of all is the capacity to care for those unlike ourselves. He smiled, thinking of all he had learned about the diverse species he now called friends. Earth may be a death world, Jack concluded, but it gave birth to life that refuses to be defined by survival alone, and in that refusal lies our greatest contribution to the galaxy.